Aquela não foi a última skin do ano, mano.
No peeking.
Cover going out.
Clearing out.
Refreshing.
Blinding.
Mais um, viado.
Tem um toque.
Mais um CT.
Calma aí, que eu vou pegar a Vandal.
Se tiver smoke, por
6
favor.
segundos. 6 segundos. Onde você quer?
Aqui perto de mim.
Last player standing.
Também, primo.
Cover going out.
Cara, é horrível, viado.
Do you see under my hood, Cypher? Does it scare you?
O Cypher dele está jogando aonde, velho?
I'll find their cipher.
Mano, tá vindo um cara aqui, ó. Cuidado.
Right here.
Shadows
Vou
traveling.
smocar embaixo.
Drop in a smoke. Blocking sight. No charges left. Yikes. No peeking.
Renovei céu.
Pew pew.
Como que eu vou fazer?
Reload.
Tem smoke céu. 40 não.
Tagado.
Vou te smocar, Cypher. Fica aí dentro da smoke.
Um em cima e embaixo, mano. Os caras tão de toque,
vejo
é
você.
sério. Passou um, clicou. Esquerda, sai.
One enemy remaining.
Que loucura.
Last player standing.
Massaram.
5 dead.
Não sei se a smoke ajudou ou atrapalhou, mas eu tentei.
We
My
doing
ult
this or
is
what?
ready.
Tem 3 lá sem dinheiro.
Keep up. Could have a drop.
Smocar embaixo.
Drop.
Tem um aqui.
Pitiful. My ultimate is ready.
Eu vou na frente. Eu tenho.
Clearing out.
Cover going out.
Smoca céu?
Por que eu que morro, velho?
Drop in a smoke.
Tem céu.
Spike planted.
One enemy remaining.
Enemy spotted B.
HS.
We're doing good. Let's do better. Just for fun.
Need a drop. Thanks.
Spike.
Keep it up.
Eu tô aqui. Ó,
Cypher tá aqui.
Let's go! Shadows
Blasting. Blinding.
Blocking sight.
Coloquei errado aqui, tá?
Your fault. You had your fun. My turn.
Caraca, eu não tô enxergando nada.
Oops.
Tem céu.
Here. Down.
40.
I know exactly where.
Like I never left.
e fugir.
Last player standing.
Stealing sight. Die.
Tem smoke e TP.
Shadows traveling.
Deu.
Queria dar um fake TP.
They think they're so secure.
Eles sabem que a gente vai no A, no B agora.
Concussing!
No peeking.
Passou.
Enemy spotted TV!
Yeah. Blocking sight.
Em cima.
One down.
Comeu. Ai, viado, ajuda.
Pô, mano, aí não.
Spike carrier killed.
Pulou junto comigo.
CT.
9 de vida.
One enemy remaining.
Não tem fuder.
Drop in a smoke.
Drop the spike! Trevor!
Sabe?
Spike planted! Didn't see me coming.
Ai, meu Deus, mano.
Race it to the spike sites.
O que eu respondo? Relaxa de vizinho. Bagulho do intercâmbio, mano.
Vamos beber, tá dando bom.
Reloading.
Reloading!
You want to play? Let's play.
Pega aqui antes ali.
Ele joga bem, mano.
Drop in a smoke.
Opa, tá na smoke da torre.
Be faster.
Peguei ele.
Tem ali em cima da caixa.
Clearing out!
Tô
Flash
mirando
out!
aqui em cima.
No peeking.
Olha só.
Ai, que encosta, velho.
I know exactly where you are.
Posso fazer a nossa base.
Blocking sight.
Porra, dá o D. Ai, bacana, velho.
Shadows traveling.
Dois passos.
Player standing.
Bota fio aí, Costa. Joga aqui com a gente agora que eles estão te esperando.
Relaxa de vizinho.
Just swapping in new fusion cells. Okay, my arms are good. We can go.
Dá pra todo mundo forçar aqui.
I am everywhere.
What's this?
Our carrier's dead. I have retrieved the spike.
Spike down A.
Reloading. Dropping smokes. How about these? Reloading.
Meu viado.
Deixa acabar já. Gente, é um negócio do chamber, né? Caralho.
Reloading.
Nowhere to run!
Reloading. drop in a smoke.
Tá dronando.
Camera taken out.
Blocking sight.
Tem céu.
Where is everyone hiding?
X não guarda.
Weapon here.
One enemy remaining.
3 out of 5.
Their backs will be towards at least one of us.
Roll for initiative.
Ele vai. O timer vai. Rezando. Cypher tá aqui.
Tem algum dano na Raze ali.
Não aparece na câmera dele não ainda.
Que, velho? Ah, lagou meu PC, mano.
Vai smocar. Ih, tu tá com a spike, bicho.
Flash out! Spike planted! My ult
É uma
ready.
câmera.
Concussing! Clearing out!
Cage triggered.
Reloading.
O smoke dele está vivo, a gente jogar tudo aqui. Isso é meio ruim.
Careful now.
Enemy spotted, eh?
Boa.
Caught one. They found my wire.
Have a kit.
Não é possível.
One enemy
Buried.
remaining.
My camera is destroyed.
Andou.
Just let them try to catch me.
I need
Come on.
this. Thank you.
Keep up.
I need a drop.
Ah, eu vou tentar fazer um split pra pegar um.
Sim. Depois a gente dá uma olhada.
Tá de alto.
Galera, vem B, vem B.
Jesus.
Vou
Cover
smocar
going
primeiro.
out.
Eu vou smocar céu, então.
Cover going out.
Já foi smoke.
Ixi, também.
Ah, tranquilo, tranquilo.
Have one of these.
Ah, velho, o cara é muito sagaz, velho.
Spike planted! Blasting!
Deixa eu...
Ah, céu. Boa.
Tem o ult. Tira a cara. Cadê os...
Flash out!
Ulta.
Last player standing.
Back like I never left.
Dei 142, né?
Last round before the switch.
We lose everything after this. Spend it.
I need a drop.
Não sei de onde ele tava, velho.
Primeira.
You want to play? Let's
Duvido,
play.
ele vai ficar aí. Tô corajoso.
Drop in a smoke.
Blinding!
Eyes down.
Planted.
Bangou.
Oh.
Ele tem também.
One enemy remaining. Last
Morri,
player
filha da
standing.
puta.
Switching sides.
I hate to say it, but probably best to play as a team. So, what's the plan?
Não, relaxa, relaxa, porque a gente ganhou nisso.
É bom o controlador ficar um em cada bomba.
Fica alguém com ele lá. Brit, fica lá e eu fico aqui. E a gente fica meio. Ou eu fico meio, não sei.
Tem.
Vem aqui.
Tem aqui não tem. Stay down.
No peeking.
Peguei.
E o Chamber só.
É o Chamber.
Pode botar.
Pega no ar.
Tem medo.
Eyes
One
down.
enemy remaining.
Agora, se alguém tá meio, né? Foi mal, gente.
Tá aqui comigo.
Oh, this reminds me of this one time where I
Eu tenho a skin dura se quiser, gente, dá o chão.
dab a drop.
Só força. Mancado.
Trevor!
Filha da puta.
Cara,
Let go.
Mais um meio, mano.
Spike down B.
jogou.
Enemy spotted.
Ó. Olha, louco.
One enemy remaining.
Tava aí também no meio.
Shadows traveling.
vou ficar aqui, velho. Ai, que desgramado.
No peeking.
Spike planted.
Boa.
Cara, velho, foi o tempo do...
They think they know pain. They can't begin to comprehend it.
Foi mais, não é mais. O único amor da minha vida. O que eu vou escutar, mano? Estou um RPGzinho de criar.
Quem aqui?
Eu também.
Enemy spotted. Mid.
Tem 16 de vida.
Socorro, galera.
Vou entregar, quero essa arma. Foda-se.
Valeu.
Mais um aqui?
No chão.
One enemy remaining.
Oh,
Last one down.
Ai que não, velho. Credo.
Wait until I
Pinão,
blind them
pinão,
to strike.
pinão, pinão. Pinão.
quem matou ali a Raze, velho, eu te agradeço muito, viu? Te amo. de
Fui eu. Vi que eles estavam te comendo tudo. Eu tentei te ajudar.
Tanquei.
coração. Obrigado.
Quer ficar meio? Vou ficar.
Beleza. Então tá bom então.
Matei sem querer.
I know exactly where you are. Cage triggered.
2,5.
Ai, ai. Que vida dura, mano. Olha essa porra,
Careful,
mano.
they found my wire.
Ai, que vida injusta, cara.
Nossa.
O cara me vem andando e dá uma lapada dessa.
My burden never ends.
Drop in a smoke.
They found my wire.
Sai do meio. Sai daí.
Party's over. My ult's ready.
Reloading. Drop in a smoke.
Parece que tá voltando. Olha ali.
Watching this spot.
Tá bom, meu brother?
Here.
Esse aqui é
30
minhas
seconds
pernas,
left.
pô.
Ah, velho, aqui pegou costas minhas. Tá no céu.
Eu vou na frente que eu tenho mais. Apontando.
Spike planted.
Meaty feet.
One enemy remaining.
I'm going my mark.
Vazou.
Clique e mira.
Reloading.
Pinei! Porra, alto no meu corpo. Porra, pinei, pinão.
Toma essa fé, então.
Match point.
Put them to sleep.
Here.
Joga na ult, me dropa a gente. Fechou?
Que é o Queen daqui raspado.
Dropa uma smokezinha, alguma coisinha. Aí você compra pra deixar.
You want to play? Let's play.
E-mail.
I know exactly where you are. Nowhere to run!
Fire in the hole!
Vai não.
Fire in the...
Clearing out.
Sai pro meio. Vai comigo.
Spike down mid.
Back like I never left!
Tira.
Que isso?
Também se quiser.
Nem nada aqui.
Spike planted.
Meu Deus, meu Deus, meu Deus.
One enemy remaining. Last player standing.
My turn!
One enemy remaining.
Meu Deus. Meu Deus.
Pode, pode, pode.
Não! Como?
Ah, não, mano.
Nossa,
Tá
o quê?
Ah, que troll, velho.
Caralho, eu dropei pra esse cara, velho. Vai se fuder, mano.
Espera mesmo, meu teclado muito muito.
Dropei pra esse cara, vai se fuder, viado.
Não acredito.
Tem mesmo, tem mesmo.
Não. Foi vacilo ali.
Drop in a smoke.
Vai, Jesus.
They found my wire. They found my wire.
Tem um cara de alp aí, o time.
Era virar no...
Tá no meio. Meio que é
virando aqui.
Tá aí, fé.
Dois, né?
HS na cove. Eu abri pra te ajudar.
Mais um lá.
145 na cove.
30 seconds left.
Ah, não. O cara saiu, que pai. Queria brincar com ele.
Spike planted. Last player standing.
My eyes are better than yours. My ultimate is ready.
Alright, lucky socks. fail me now.
Let's have some fun.
Eu tô doidinho pra ver o seu.
Watching this spot.
Quem aqui?
They found my wire.
A Raze entrou.
Homenzão.
Spike planted.
Ah, que isso, velho.
Last player standing.
Quer ver o time? Ah, o que eu falei?
Blocking sight.
Mas o que eu falei?
I feel the strain. Block it out.
Se fuder, mano.
I'm saving.
Na hora que eu tiro a mira, o cara aparece. Impressionante.
No peeking.
Flash out!
Help.
Rot in a smoke.
Right there.
Spike planted.
Vamos tentar parar de dar FB aí, jogar mais safe. Joga 2 na B pra ajudar ele. Não, tem um cara meio.
Last player standing.
Ai, que é isso, véi?
If they try something, you go on my mark.
Cuidado pra eu não acabar entregando prorrogação aí, galera. Falta só um round. Para de entregar isso. Duas operator.
Hit them fast.
Hit them hard. Got a job.
Thank you.
Não dá.
Here.
Boa.
Boa, valoriza. Tem aqui. Tá tão dando atirando, tem mais ainda.
Ninguém.
Tem sim, tem sim.
Enemy spotted A.
Boa.
Trevor!
Come. Come, gente.
One enemy remaining. Spike down A.
Perdão, lá
Defenders
pro
win.
totalmente meu negócio do
Não.
Tá bem, pai. Ah, velho, cara. Eu tenho que tentar, ué. Get off of my feet. Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Ba-bum, ba-bum. Money chopper, money chopper, money chopper. Caraca, essa aqui também ficou braba, mano. Money chopper, money chopper, money chopper, money chopper. Sorry for small poplar. Babe, why can't you love me? Perfume exalando, fumando a brabada. Robocó. A tropa do homem. É hoje que tu fode com a tropa do piranha. Vem, vem. Desce no pau. Ok, não sei o que eu faço, mano. Ok, não. Caralho. Caralho. Caralho, mano, como eu vi isso? Olha isso. Minha cara. Ah, não dá pra vocês verem, tá em cima. É, mano.
Mesmo que o sistema esteja inoperante, o piloto ele tem que tomar algumas atitudes como descer o avião em alta velocidade. Porque quando você desce, a temperatura do ar nas camadas mais baixas aumenta e o gelo vai sair da asa. Assim como outras funções operacionais que o piloto tem que tomar. O fato é que o gelo, neste tipo de asa, ele causa disrupção no fluxo de ar em cima da asa, que pode levar a uma condição de perda de controle. Está sendo muito falado das condições de gelo que existiam na rota. Esse pode ser um fator contribuinte, ainda não sabemos. De qualquer maneira, somente um fator não faz um avião se acidentar. Tem de haver outros fatores envolvidos para que o acidente tenha acontecido. E isso só a investigação vai elucidar. Mas o gelo, o que causa gelo em avião, se fosse a causa do acidente? O gelo, ele gruda na parte da frente da asa, e ele também pode grudar nas partes dos atuadores dos controles de voo da asa. E esse gelo se formando, tanto na parte da frente, ele causa um turbilhonamento do ar. Então o ar ele precisa passar liso em cima da asa do avião e é isso que gera a força de sustentação. Se ele passar turbilhonado, uma grande parte da força que sustenta o avião ela vai deixar de existir. Ao mesmo tempo, se houve congelamento de ailerons, por exemplo, o controle fica prejudicado E aí o avião perde
Mano,
a capacidade de fazer manobras de inclinação de asa. Mas isso seria uma hipótese para o caso de formação de gelo. Eu estou explicando o que causa o gelo no avião. Não sabemos ainda se isso se aplica ao acidente que aconteceu hoje, porque ainda é muito cedo para saber. Não é possível generalizar que um modelo de avião X ou Y é inseguro, pelo fato de que, como o exemplo da Passaredo, que agora se chama Voipaz, ela é a empresa aérea mais antiga do Brasil em operação. Seria a TAM, mas a TAM não existe mais, existe a Latam. Então, em uma empresa tão antiga, em que a frota inteira é constituída por ATRs, ela nunca sofreu um acidente. Assim como empresas mundo afora voando, tanto em condições de neve quanto em condições...
History. However, just minutes before Bush arrives at the school, a breaking news message makes the rounds. One that will forever change the course of history. At 8:46 a.m., Flight 11 crashes into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. And the news of this event spreads in a, until then, historically unprecedented manner. Just 1 minute and 28 seconds after the impact, a camera crew from WNYW goes on air.
Tim, just a few moments ago, something believed to be a plane crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center.
At 8:49 a.m.,
Uma que ficava aqui, não era?
É. Aqui não tá. Aqui também não. Eu tinha levado pra Valadares, só que eu trouxe ela, eu tenho certeza absoluta. Aqui também não tá.
Aqui não vi mais.
Não é? Deixa lá que eu não
Embaixo
vejo.
também. Embaixo acho que não tá. Será que não ficou lá, não? Tá lá embaixo, não? Não. Ué, então você tem que mandar mensagem pra tia e ver se tá lá. Só pode estar lá. Tem lógica, não?
Pois é. Manda mensagem pra você.
Se tivesse trago, você tinha colocado junto aqui, ué.
Pois é, ué.
Teria.
Que estranho. sempre ficava aqui, ó. Né?
É, ficava nessas gavetas aí. Tá bom.
Você manda mensagem pra ele, então.
Uhum.
Você não tá aí aqui.
Não, não vai estar aí. Manda mensagem pra ele. Tá bom.
Ah, mas pode.
É.
Lógico.
Obrigado. Às vezes eu tirei pra fazer alguma coisa, esqueci lá, sei lá.
Ai, meu Deus. Turma 201. Doze do 7, isso aqui mesmo. Vamos ver. Nossa, essa prova aqui eu chutei tudo. Chutei tudo. Biologia. B, acertei. E. B. C. É 6 B 7 B 8 E 9 E 10 9. Eita porra, calma. 8 E 9 D 10 E 11 B 12 A 12 E. Nossa senhora. 13 B, acertei. 14 dado. 15 B 16 E 17 C 18 C 19 A 20 A 21. Então tá, vamos lá. D E C E D E C E A E D C A E D C C B 31 D E D C B D E D C B B C S C B C E C C A E A E A A E A E A E D D E D D B B E D D B B. Vamos ver quantos que eu acertei. 1, 2, 3, 4 em biologia. 4. Um, 2, 3, 4, 5 em física. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 em português. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 em história. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Então vamos lá. 4, 9, 14, 20, 27. Tá bom, mais de 50% sem estudar nada e fazendo a prova em meia hora. Tá bom, né? Mais da metade. Assim, bom não tá não, né? Mas tá bom. Accepted. Oh man. Visa details. Visa approved. New York 4. Oh fuck. Dia 20/8 a 22/8. Say Jesus Christ.
CNN pauses their programming to cover the crash, followed by CNBC, ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox News, and international television stations. In less than 10 minutes, the eyes of the whole world were focused on New York City. However, nothing is known about the causes at this point in time, and speculation about a possible accident is circulating in Sarasota, where Bush is preparing to head into the school. Right along Bush's side is White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer, who throughout the day is taking handwritten notes that reveal how everything unfolded from the president's perspective, with White House Chief of Staff Karl Rove informing the president about the impact just before he heads into the school for the event. As the nation listens to TV anchors speculating potential reasons for the crash, the president listens to school children reading stories. There's still the possibility that it could all be just a tragic accident, but a few minutes later, this possibility can be ruled out. At 9:03 a.m., United Flight 175 heads for the South Tower. Exactly 2 minutes elapsed as the news circulated among reporters and White House staff, with the president being one of the few people unaware of what's going on, until eventually the White House Chief of Staff leans into Bush's ear and says, "A second plane hit the second tower. America is under attack." A few miles away at this time, a US government-modified Boeing 747 with the usual call sign Air Force One prepares to take the president back on a short journey to Washington, D.C. What no one can predict at this point is that the president will be on that plane for much longer today. After the school event was cut short, senior White House staff gathers in an adjoining classroom for a briefing, following the news on TV much like the rest of the country, and an initial statement was prepared.
Today we've had a national tragedy.
Simultaneously, the Air Force is clearing the way for a seamless flight of the presidential plane.
I need you guys to keep a good eye on Air Force One today and make sure that it gets priority. They're going to probably be taking off early here to come back to Washington, D.C. So is there any way that you can help us out on that? Yeah, they're out of Sarasota. They'll be coming back probably in the next hour, I believe.
But whether Bush should really return to the capital in this situation is unclear, as the attacks on the nation continue. While the president is in his limousine heading to the airport, he is informed of yet another strike.
This is coming at 9:43 Eastern Time. We're looking at a live picture from Washington, and there is smoke pouring out of the Pentagon.
About 10 minutes after the strike against the Pentagon, Air Force One is about to take off from Sarasota. The Secret Service had received reports that a person with an unclear device was near one end of the runway, and fear was that it might be a weapon. Even though later it turned out to be nothing but a camera, as a precaution, the pilot decided to turn the plane around and take off from the other side so as not to be in the line of sight of a possible shooter. Unlike usual, the plane also climbs at an extremely steep angle, a safety maneuver that can protect against ground attacks. As Air Force One continues to gain altitude, heading towards the capital city, one other plane over US airspace is still under the control of the hijackers. Flight 93, initially heading to San Francisco, had changed course, now also approaching Washington, D.C. As it later turns out, the passengers of this flight had heard of the attacks on New York and initiated a revolt against the hijackers, with passengers attempting to gain control. At 10:03 a.m., Flight 93 crashes in a field in Pennsylvania. Although the revolt was unsuccessful in saving the passengers, it did save lives by preventing the hijackers from reaching their destination. Meanwhile, aboard Air Force One, heated debates are raging about where the president should be flying at this time. Bush himself had given the order to return to Washington, but in the midst of an ongoing threat, the Secret Service was not about to risk it. Bush was barred, or at least strongly discouraged from returning to D.C. Instead, Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana was chosen. Here, Air Force One can then refuel, and a longer plan can be devised for where the president can most effectively carry out his duties. As the plane heads for Louisiana, growing concerns are also raised about the possibility of Air Force One itself becoming a target. While the plane is equipped with flares and smoke screens to detect radar and heat-guided missiles, it has no way to protect itself against an airliner collision.
Air Force One is filing a random route, by the way.
Okay.
We don't know where they decided to go, but they still don't have a fighter escort.
They still do not?
That's correct.
Holy cow.
Adding to this concern is the fact that some airplanes were not immediately responding to ATC calls, which led to the wrong belief that there might be an additional 3 aircraft still missing. Every plane in the sky was seen as a possible threat now, and therefore Air Force One started climbing to an extremely high flight level, above the usual cruising altitude for commercial flights, heading up to 45,000 feet so they can outrun anybody. While lateral movement is more difficult to track, Air Force One had this altitude for itself. And then, towards the end of their flight to Louisiana, Air Force One was joined by 2 fighter jets that had taken off from Joint Reserve Base Ellington to escort the president for the final few minutes. Throughout the flight, Air Force One's normally stable telephone lines were suddenly unreliable, making communications with the White House, where Vice President Cheney was sheltered in a secret bunker, very difficult. Communication networks across the country were at their limit that day, and Air Force One wasn't an exception. And it was during this flight when a controversial military order was made, one that until today is a controversial topic of discussion. In the bunker below the White House, there were ongoing fears that another hijacked plane was flying towards Washington, D.C. It later turned out that this was Flight 93, which crashed in Pennsylvania 10 minutes earlier. However, the information about the crash had not yet reached the White House, and between 10:12 and 10:18 a.m., Vice President Cheney was asked whether this plane should be shot down if it continued to head towards the Capitol. According to witnesses, as well as Cheney's own biography, he replied without hesitation and gave the go-ahead for the shooting down of a commercial plane that poses danger. The problem with such an order, however, is that Cheney, as vice president, is not part of the military chain of command. According to this hierarchy, such an order comes from the president, with the only other person in question being the Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, who is second in line to the president. Rumsfeld could not be reached because he was at the Pentagon, which was itself the target of an attack, and he was busy helping with rescue work on site. Standing in the same secure room as Dick Cheney when he made that order was White House Deputy Chief of Staff Joshua Bolten. After Cheney made the order, he immediately asked Cheney to call the president to confirm this command. Cheney does exactly so and rings Air Force One at 10:18 a.m. to speak with the president. According to the investigation report, this phone call lasts 2 minutes, which lines up with the notes that Ari Fleischer took. At 10:20 a.m., these notes show the words, "Authorized shutdown if necessary." The question, however, remains. Did Vice President Cheney initially give a command that he wasn't entitled to give? He himself denied it and stated that he had already confirmed this order in a previous conversation with Bush. And in fact, Fleischer's notes do show that Bush and Cheney spoke on the phone beforehand, visible in the above entry at 9:45 a.m. However, there is no sign of a conversation about a possible shootdown. Whether the two spoke about this or not cannot be answered conclusively. Upon landing at Barksdale Air Force Base, a more detailed briefing took place, and the president once again addressed the nation.
Freedom itself was attacked this morning.
As Bush delivers his speech, his security team and national advisors have come up with a new destination. The president is determined to head to the White House, saying, "I want to go back home ASAP, and I don't want whoever this is holding me outside Washington." But the Secret Service disagrees, with Eddie Marinzel, the president's lead Secret Service agent, saying, "Our people are saying it's too unsteady still." Therefore, at 1:48 p.m., Air Force One takes off from Barksdale Base, heading not for Washington, but for the Offutt Air Force Base in Nebraska. The reason they decided to go here is that this base has the US Stratcom bunker, an immensely protected underground compound with advanced communication capabilities. On this journey to Nebraska, Air Force One is flying almost entirely alone in American airspace. Already at 9:45 a.m., 1 hour after the first strike, a complete closure of all US airspace was ordered, after which aircraft had to land at the nearest possible airport. At around 12:15, this closure was completed, with all commercial and general aviation grounded. After landing at Offutt Air Force Base, the president and his team gathered in the US Stratcom bunker. It is located 40 feet underground and is thickly built to provide protection from any possible attacks. In addition to an extensive communication center, there are also several other rooms with offices and even bedrooms, so that this station could function as an overnight base if necessary. At 4:36 p.m., the active attacks on the nation seem to have come to an end, and the security situation allows the president to take his third flight of the day. Air Force One departs, bound for Joint Base Andrews. But even this flight was carried out under immense security concerns, as the Secret Service not only worries about security in the airspace, but also considers possible threats on board. One, not frequently reported on, concern was that just a few hours earlier, a call had come in at the White House switchboard with a message that resulted in the worst of fears. The message on the call was "Angel is next." Angel is the internal code word for Air Force One, and what is especially concerning is the fact that this code word was not publicly known, leading Secret Service agents to suspect an insider might be plotting an attack on the plane. In face of this ominous message, the Secret Service decided to permanently station agents in the aisle of the presidential area. Additionally, another agent was placed near the cockpit door, ready to defend it from any intruders. In the later investigation into the events of September 11, it'll appear that a number of misunderstandings had led to this warning, and that these exact words were not uttered on the phone. It was one of many false alarms that day that severely raised tensions aboard Air Force One. At 6:44 p.m., Air Force One lands at Andrews Air Force Base. From here, the president flies on Marine One to the White House, where he will address the nation from the Oval Office that same evening. A simple journey that was supposed to take just 2.5 hours turned into a tense relay race between Sarasota, Florida and the White House in DC. All in all, it took more than 9 hours, a time period in which thousands of lives were lost in an attack that will shape the next decades. As for Air Force One, this was arguably the most serious test of its safety capabilities that ever occurred. Many of the protocols were shown to work, and the pilots made decisions to ensure maximum safety. At the same time, the day also revealed weaknesses, with a large delay until the flight could be escorted, as well as confusion due to false reports, and an unreliable communication network. All things that were improved on in the following years. The September 11 attacks brought the realities of global events directly into our homes through cable news. In the more than 20 years since, the media landscape has changed dramatically. Today, outlets not only rely on TV ratings, but also on generating clicks, leading to increasingly divisive headlines and stories designed to provoke outrage. And it's easy to fall into this cycle of only reading articles that confirm our opinions. To better navigate this, I personally use Ground News, the sponsor of this video. Their app allows you to see how different news outlets report on the same story, helping you spot biases. For example, the net is that just highlights these outlets. Plus, you can track your own news bias based on the articles that you read. In order to access all these amazing features, you can get 40% off their Vantage subscription if you use my link, ground.news/neo. It truly is a fantastic way to stay informed without falling into an echo chamber. So was dominated by foreign policy decisions in the wake of these September 11 attacks.
Al-Qaeda's key members and associates have been brought
to destroy, capture, kill Osama bin Laden and all of the terrorists.
This tape, published by Al Jazeera, now shows a recovered Osama bin Laden, claiming responsibility for the attacks much more directly than before. The staging of this recording, in which bin Laden tries to appear as some legitimate figure, directly addressing the nation that he attacked, is a painful reminder that the most wanted man on the planet must be feeling somewhat safe wherever he may be. At the very same time, at the CIA headquarters in Virginia, where a special unit was tasked with finding bin Laden, pretty much every lead had gone cold at this point. A situation that was even more frustrating considering that almost 3 years ago, they believed they were close to catching him. By the end of the 2001 US invasion of Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda fighters had been pushed into the eastern part of the country. Here, they barricaded themselves in the caves of Tora Bora, and American intelligence agencies suspected bin Laden to be amongst them. Supported by the Americans, local Afghan tribes fought through the terrain, and heavy airstrikes were carried out. But by the time the battle was won, bin Laden had already fled. After the fighting ended, only about 20 people were arrested, and the CIA was left empty-handed, having missed what may have been a unique opportunity to capture Al-Qaeda's leader. But at least one of the people arrested here would eventually open a lead for investigators to follow. Prior to his capture, Mohammed al-Qahtani was unknown to the investigators. He himself denied any connection to Al-Qaeda and said that he was in Afghanistan to pursue his interest in falconry. But when investigators took his fingerprints, they found a match in their system. They found out that just a few weeks before the September 11 attacks, he had tried to enter the United States. Carrying $2,800 in cash with him and traveling on a one-way ticket, the customs agent became suspicious of Qahtani and denied him entry to the country, fearing he might be trying to illegally immigrate. The investigators also knew that on the very same day, a call was placed from Orlando Airport to an Al-Qaeda telephone number in the United Arab Emirates. This number had been monitored, and the fact that Qahtani was at the airport at the same time made investigators scramble to establish some sort of connection between these events. FBI agents worked their way through piles of airport surveillance footage looking for more leads, and eventually they were successful. They were able to identify a car that was at the time rented by Mohammed Atta. Atta was the ringleader of the September 11 attacks and piloted American Airlines Flight 11 that struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. It was concluded that Atta was waiting at the airport to pick up Qahtani. It is widely believed that Qahtani was intended as one of the hijackers of United Airlines Flight 93, which is the flight that failed to reach the attacker's intended destination because it crashed in Pennsylvania while the passengers were attempting to regain control. With that knowledge, Qahtani was interrogated, and he was one of several Al-Qaeda captives that in the coming months and years made it possible for investigators to get a better picture of the group's inner workings. Abu Zubaydah, a logistician for the group, was arrested in March 2002 and offered the CIA information that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was Al-Qaeda's operational commander, had planned the attacks on America. 1 year later, he also was arrested. And Qahtani revealed that in July 2001, in preparation for the attacks, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed introduced him to a person previously unknown to the CIA, Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti, who trained Qahtani in operational security. All this helped investigators to understand Al-Qaeda's structure better, with less trained operatives, a command and planning layer, and bin Laden as the leader. But they were still clueless as to bin Laden's whereabouts. The CIA was mapping relationships to understand who was in close contact with him and how he communicated from his hiding place. The private network of bin Laden, his family members, were also looked at. However, there was no contact between bin Laden and those family members of him that could be located. What the CIA knew was that bin Laden continued to send messages though. In the following years, new audio tapes appeared, and it was known that he was communicating with members of leadership within Al-Qaeda. The strategy of the CIA, therefore, was to look for the courier network, people that transport information.
big and tasty. War with Iran.
I'm running for governor.
Explode in the sky.
Our congratulations on
an historic victory.
In mid-January 2004, Kurdish security forces arrested a man named Hassan Gul. He was carrying a letter that was addressed to bin Laden. Gul was handed over to the Americans, who interrogated him and received crucial information indicating that a key person to finding bin Laden had already been on the agency's radar. Hassan Gul claimed that it is Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti who operates as bin Laden's personal courier. As the focus of the investigation shifts to Kuwaiti, investigators receive conflicting information about his role within Al-Qaeda. While Hassan Gul describes a larger role and that Kuwaiti was familiar with both Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and with his successor Abu Faraj al-Libi, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, on the other hand, denies a major role of Kuwaiti and claims that this person has long since retired and is inactive. In May 2005, Abu Faraj al-Libi himself was also arrested in Pakistan, and he too vehemently denies a larger role of Kuwaiti. Investigators were also questioning a guy that goes by the name of Hambali, the former leader of Al-Qaeda's Southeast Asian affiliate group. He claimed that Kuwaiti did play a role, as he was the one managing a safe house in Karachi around the time the Taliban fled from Afghanistan. If anything, the many contradicting statements about the role of Kuwaiti made him all the more interesting. The problem was that other than his name, not much was known about him. And even the name itself is not uniquely identifiable, as it is not his real name, but an alias that translates as the father of Ahmed from Kuwait. While some important information was obtained through the interrogation of prisoners, the techniques used were highly controversial. Many of the prisoners were subjected to so-called enhanced interrogation techniques. That means abusive treatment including torture, such as in the form of waterboarding. A 2014 Senate Intelligence Committee report examining the individual interrogations concluded that these techniques were ineffective and did not help to obtain information about bin Laden. Apart from that, there is the question of whether the display of the CIA's actions, seemingly freed from the rule of law, doesn't itself damage the national security of the country. It is a discourse that's bigger than the scope of this video. But with investigators stuck yet again, the next pieces of information will not come from their own work.
No, the sides of
peace and stability.
Blockbuster Total Access, Netflix. Essentially, they work the same way.
The latest cyber drug of choice is called Twitter.
For a war that should have never been waged.
Calling it iPhone.
In 2007, the CIA received the information they're looking for, the true identity of the Kuwaiti. It does not come from their own research, but from a foreign intelligence service, which is not known. The information reveals the true name of the Kuwaiti to be Ibrahim Saeed Ahmed, a Pakistani whose family had only moved to Kuwait. But while they have waited 2 years to get the name, it will take further years until they are able to locate him.
President-elect for victory.
For bankruptcy.
I'm gonna let you finish.
Michael Jackson has died.
The rescue effort begins.
This guy is great. As good as we've seen.
In June 2010, the Kuwaiti and his brother changed the way to communicate with their cell phones, a fact that made it possible to determine the geolocation of the calls placed. The NSA had received telephone numbers suspected of being connected to Kuwaiti from a third country, which were now intercepted. Amidst the countless conversations monitored, one man stood out because he fit the profile of Kuwaiti. He spoke a mix of Arabic and Pashto, the language spoken in northwestern Pakistan. And in a conversation with a friend in the Persian Gulf, the man dodged the question of his whereabouts, cryptically replying that he is with the people he was with before. In addition, the investigators recognized that this individual goes to great lengths to prevent being tracked. His cell phone was switched off for most of the time, and it seems that he only put the battery in it when he was in the area around the city of Peshawar. As it became increasingly certain that this is Kuwaiti, efforts began to follow him on the ground. In August 2010, a Pakistani CIA agent managed to identify him in his car in Peshawar. From there, he was secretly followed on his way home. The large house surprised investigators. The agents had assumed that now that Kuwaiti had been identified, they would be monitoring him until he approached bin Laden's hideout. But when you look at the massive compound in which Kuwaiti lives, investigators thought that they might already be there, that Kuwaiti may be living under the same roof as bin Laden. Even though Washington wasn't entirely sure about it at the time, bin Laden was located, and a manhunt that has had top priority since the September 11 attacks comes to its final stage. The task now was no longer with the intelligence agents, but with a team of special units who knew very little about what to expect when raiding this compound. On May 1st, 2011, at 11 p.m. local time, 2 Black Hawk helicopters, equipped with secret stealth technology, take off from Jalalabad airfield and head towards bin Laden's compound. The mission is complicated by the fact that the United States government had decided not to inform Pakistan of the operation, which means the Navy SEALs had to avoid getting noticed, which seems especially challenging considering that bin Laden's complex is located right next to a Pakistani military academy. The story of how this raid unfolded is truly fascinating, which is why I have produced another full-length video about this operation, creating detailed models of the mission's plan and mapping out how it played out during that night. But unfortunately, due to the violent nature of this topic, if I uploaded this video to YouTube, it would certainly get demonetized and age-restricted. Luckily though, I was still able to make the video, thanks to the power of Nebula, where you can watch it right now. With the mission not going to plan, a live video feed is streamed to the White House, where the president and his top security advisors are following the operation. This is just one of tons of exclusive videos only available on Nebula. I've also created a video about the construction of the Twin Towers, and another one telling the story of Flight MH17 that was shot down over Ukraine. And you also get access to all the other amazing stuff on Nebula. Because what's truly special about Nebula is that it is a creator-owned platform, built by me and other YouTubers and podcasters. And now, you will get a $10 discount a year, which means it will cost you only $3.33 each month. That way, you will support the ambitious project that me
World Trade Center. How nukes are transported.
It is almost midnight at San Francisco International Airport as Air Canada Flight 759 is approaching. Just one more easy landing and the pilots can call it a day. What they are not aware of is that the airport looks quite a bit different than usual. They are cleared to land on runway 28 right, located next to 28 left. However, due to maintenance, the runway 28 left is closed that night, and the lights had been turned off. But as the pilots who both have landed at this airport before were expecting to see two parallel runways, they make a mistake, thinking that the center runway is 28 left. They confuse the taxiway on the right to be runway 28 right. On that very taxiway, 4 other flights are lined up for departure. United 1, a Boeing 787, Philippine Airlines 115, an Airbus 340, and 2 more United flights. In total, over 1,000 passengers, and the Air Canada flight is heading straight towards them all. The information about the runway closure was listed in a so-called NOTAM. These are notices to airmen which summarize any exceptional details regarding the flight. But these lists are quite long, typically several pages. And it's not easy to pick out the details that are actually relevant for the flight. The flight crew missed the runway closure. The pilots had been cleared for a so-called visual approach. This means that they can line up with the runway manually, steering the aircraft according to what they see. Considering the clear weather conditions, the visual approach is the normal procedure. But as landings on false runways or even taxiways have occurred before, careful pilots usually back up their approach with instrument guidance. In this case, they could have used the Instrument Landing System, ILS for short, of runway 28 right, to confirm that they really were on the right path. In order to activate this system, a frequency corresponding to that runway has to be dialed into the navigation receiver. Modern flight management computers usually do this automatically, but in this case, it had to be dialed in manually, and for some reason, the first officer didn't do that. The cockpit crew has had a long day. Coming from Toronto, Canada, their inner clock is already at 3 past midnight, and overconfidence and fatigue have been attributed to these mistakes. Canadian pilot fatigue rules were less stringent than US regulations, and the flight's captain had no significant rest period for the last 19 hours. As no one recognized that the airplane is lined up for the taxiway, Air Canada heads closer and closer to disaster. The ideal flight path for the visual approach at this airport comes in at a slight angle from the right. This was done in order to have incoming planes stay further away from the west shore of the bay, reducing noise pollution. Therefore, it is not unusual that from the tower perspective, airplanes appear a little offset to the left of the runway centerline. Air Canada further closes in on the runway, about to crash into the parked planes. And as they notice that something seems off, they reassure themselves.
And Tower, just want to confirm this Air Canada 759, we see some lights on the runway there. Runway, can you confirm a clear land?
At this moment, the tower voice recording shows that it took the tower controller about 5 seconds to answer the call.
Air Canada 759, confirm clear to land runway 28 right, there is no one on 28 right, flight view.
There was only one controller managing the traffic at this time. Normally, an additional ground controller is responsible for handling the ground traffic, but during the less busy night hours, the tower controller often works both frequencies. The pilots of United Flight 1, waiting as first in line on taxiway Charlie, were listening in on this exchange with Air Canada. They probably were wondering why Air Canada was still so far to the left of the center line. When it became obvious to them that the plane was heading for the taxiway, they spoke up quickly, not even mentioning their own call sign in order to save any second.
Where's this guy going? He's on the taxiway. Air Canada go around.
In the go around, Air Canada 759.
What we just witnessed could have been the largest accident in general aviation that ever happened. Air Canada 759 missed the tail fins of the waiting aircraft only by a few meters.
That looked like you were lined up for Charlie there. Flight heading 280, climb maintain 3000.
Heading 280, 3000, Canada 759.
United 1, Air Canada flew directly over us. Yeah, I saw that, guys.
This real footage of the incident shows just how close the planes were. A full investigation was launched, and the National Transportation Safety Board has released an entire list of recommendations, many of which have already been implemented. Visual approaches at night are no longer allowed at San Francisco when an adjacent runway is closed. Furthermore, 2 air traffic controllers are now required to be on duty until the late-night arrival rush is over. The incident became a striking reminder of the dangers of miscommunications at airports. But whether enough lessons had really been learned is increasingly being put into question, as this year saw an unprecedented amount of close calls at US airports.
A close call between 2 planes at New York's JFK Airport is now under federal investigation.
In Austin, an airport crisis caught just in time. This 4th close call of the year happened at Burbank Airport on Wednesday.
Well, tonight the FAA has launched an investigation into yet another near collision of 2 aircraft, this one at Boston Logan International Airport.
This morning, another close call between 2 planes is under investigation. The FAA says a Republic Airways flight crossed the wrong runway at Reagan National Airport.
On January 13, 2023, 2 airplanes almost crashed into each other at JFK Airport in New York City. American Airlines Flight 106 was coming from the northwest along taxiway Bravo. To get to the departure end of runway 4 left, where they were going to take off, they were told to taxi along Bravo and then turn onto Kilo.
6 Heavy Canada ground, next 4 left, taxi left, Bravo, for Kilo.
Note that the pilot did not read back the runway assignment, but just the taxi route. This is a minor deviation from protocol, and the controller simply dismissed it, something that will prove dangerous. At about the same time as they reached that intersection, Delta Airlines Flight 1943 was ready for takeoff on runway 4 left and received its final clearance.
Delta 1943, wind 35018, goes 24, runway 4 left, clear for takeoff. Clear for takeoff, runway 4 left, Delta 1943.
Meanwhile, American Airlines 106 is continuing to taxi and is instructed to turn at Kilo.
American 106 Heavy, cross runway 21 left at Kilo.
But instead of turning right onto Kilo, they taxi straight ahead onto Juliet, thereby crossing the very same runway on which the Delta flight is departing. Why the pilots of the American Airlines flight continued taxiing straight ahead is unclear. JFK does often operate departures on runway 31 left. Perhaps the pilots were so used to that taxi route that in their mind they were going to take off from there. Another factor that might have pre-programmed them to believe they were departing from 31 left was that the current winds were 340 degrees with 18 knots and gusts of 24 knots. These conditions would have favored runway 31 left for departure. For operational reasons, however, the airport was using runway 4 left for departure. Also noteworthy is that both flight crews could not hear each other. American 106 was on the ground frequency, while Delta 1943 was on the tower frequency. They were talking to different controllers and did not have a mental picture of what the other one was doing. Thankfully, just seconds after the mistake, the tower controller notices what's happening and reacts extremely well.
American 106 Heavy, American 106 Heavy, hold position. American 106 Heavy, hold position. Delta 1943, cancel takeoff plans. Delta 1943, cancel takeoff plans.
Oh my gosh.
Alright,
and Delta 1943.
The Delta plane comes to a stop about 1,000 feet shy of intersection Juliet, and nobody was injured. The US Federal Aviation Administration categorizes runway incursions by type and severity. Besides the incursions that actually result in an accident, there are 4 categories ranging from close calls in which a collision was just narrowly avoided to errors that at no point posed any security risks. The JFK incident was serious enough to be categorized as Category B. Looking at the statistics, it can be observed that the number of serious incidents over the past 2 decades has been going down. While there were 22 Category A incidents in 2007, there have never been more than 9 such incidents per year in the past decade. As far as Category B incursions are concerned, a similar trend is visible.
If you look at the last decade or so, you would see between 10 and 20 times a year typically that this would happen. This year we're on track to have more than 20, and even one is one that I would not like to see happen.
The JFK incident has put a large media spotlight on airport safety, but still, it will just take 3 weeks until the next close call. This one, perhaps the most scary one. Flight FedEx 1432, a Boeing 767 cargo plane, was coming from Memphis and arrived in the early morning hours in Austin. As happens so often in Austin,
767 was the one I was taking today, I think.
The ground is covered with a thin layer of fog, just about 1,000 feet thick, but very dense. They are still high above that fog layer, enjoying a clear sky, but they will have to dive through it for their landing.
Austin Tower, FedEx 1432 Heavy, passing 5.4 for the Cat 3 ILS 18 left.
Due to the low visibility, FedEx 1432 had to execute what is called a Category 3 instrument approach, a procedure applied at very low visibility and clouds reaching almost to the ground. For such approaches, the auto-land system of the airplane is used and the flight crew only monitors the correct operations of all systems. This in itself is just routine for the flight crew and nothing unusual.
FedEx 1432 Heavy, Austin Tower, 18 left, RVR, touchdown 1,400, midpoint 600, roll out 1,800, 18 left, clear to land.
The RVR value given by the tower controller denotes the visibility in feet at 3 different points along the runway: near the touchdown point, the middle, and the end. The phrase passing 5.4 means that they are 5.4 miles away from the ILS transmitter, which sits at the end of the runway. At just this moment, Southwest 708 calls in.
Tower, Southwest 708, we're short of 18 left, and we're ready. Southwest 708, Austin Tower, runway 18 left, RVR 1,200, midpoint 600, roll out 1,600. Flight heading 170, runway 18 left, clear for takeoff, traffic 3 mile final is a heavy 767.
Okay, 170, clear for takeoff, 18 left, copy the traffic, Southwest 708.
The tower controller's intention is to have the Southwest flight take off on the same runway before the FedEx lands. 3 miles is usually a comfortable spacing to let a departure slip in front, and the phrase "traffic on 3 mile final is a heavy 767" is to inform the Southwest crew about the incoming FedEx plane, which requires them to do a speedy departure. But things take longer than expected. Time is ticking as the FedEx is entering the fog layer, not able to see anything out of their cockpit windows anymore. Their distance to the runway has now shrunk to nearly 1.2 miles, and they are becoming nervous about the Southwest still sitting on the runway.
Tower confirm, FedEx 1432 Heavy, clear to land on 18 left. FedEx 1432 Heavy, that is affirmative, sir. 18 left, you are clear to land, traffic departure, roger, route to 737. Roger.
60 seconds have now passed since the tower gave Southwest 708 the takeoff clearance, and apparently they are still standing at the threshold. Although there is no fixed time limit for starting the takeoff roll, it is expected that pilots perform the takeoff in an expeditious way.
Southwest 70, confirm on the roll. Rolling now.
Meanwhile, FedEx is descending through the fog layer and highly concentrated to look for the approach lights that show up. At about 150 feet above the ground, the fog clears up a bit and they can make out the lights of Southwest 708 still on the runway, rolling but yet very slow. They immediately initiate a go-around and they address the Southwest crew directly.
Southwest aboard. FedEx is on the go. Southwest 708, roger, you can turn right when able.
The tower's transmission is the result of a misunderstanding, as he assumed the abort message had come from Southwest, which was informing them about aborting their takeoff run.
Negative.
The Southwest crew, however, was probably already beyond their V1 speed, and rejecting the takeoff would have been dangerous. As they were busy, they simply answered negative. This exchange shows just how confusing things can get very quickly. Both planes come within 100 feet of each other, but the FedEx is able to outclimb the departing Southwest plane. Normally, one aircraft is not allowed to give instructions to another. The fact that the FedEx crew did shows the severity of the situation. After the tower controller got things sorted out, he takes active control again and gives instructions to both airplanes that keep them separated.
1432, climb maintain 3000, when able you can turn left heading 080. Wind turn to 030, 3000, FedEx 1432 heavy. Southwest 70, you can turn left heading 170. 170, South 79.
Two airplanes should never come this close in such a situation. At the same time, the sequence of events also shows that several procedures did work in avoiding a collision. Whether by directly seeing the Southwest on the runway or a warning of the TCAS system, the FedEx crew took timely action to stay separated from the other aircraft.
This 1432 heavy, roger, sir. You have our apologies. We appreciate your professionalism. Thank you.
Was it a wise decision to let Southwest go in front of FedEx while they were on a 3-mile final? In hindsight, the answer is probably no. Particularly not at a time of very low traffic, where a short 2-minute delay for Southwest 708 would have taken all the stress and risk out of the situation. On the other hand, Southwest pilots are known for their proficiency and expeditious takeoffs. Thousands of other times, such a takeoff clearance has already worked just fine. When it comes to the ultimate question of responsibility, the full NTSB investigation will decide about that. Since the beginning of the year, 8 cases of one-way incidents have been reported, 3 of which have already been classified as Category B. At what point it is no longer a statistically plausible accumulation, but a serious problem, is difficult to say. At least to some degree, the current media attention is highlighting something that has always happened. All of this is to prevent a repeat of history. If you look at a list of the deadliest aviation accidents that ever happened, the number 1 spot isn't a high-altitude crash, but rather 2 planes colliding on the runway.
Oh my. Really?
This accident occurred in 1977 between a KLM and a Pan American flight. Both planes were 747s, at the time the largest passenger plane in the world. In the cockpit of the KLM sits one of the airline's most experienced pilots, who even appears in the company's advertising. The weather had deteriorated massively, and the 2 planes did not see each other, nor could the tower controllers see the aircraft. While the Pan Am is taxiing down the runway, the KLM is lining up for their departure. And with the pilot under the wrong assumption that the runway is clear, they start rolling.
Oh shit.
How it came this far is a fascinating story, which is why I have produced another full-length video about this crash, creating detailed models and mapping out where exactly things went wrong.
K1 4805 is now ready for takeoff, and we're waiting for our ATC clearance.
This video is part of my ongoing Nebula Original series, Under Exposure, in which I explore topics that could not work on YouTube. That is because, on one hand, they are violent subject matters that would get demonetized or perhaps even age-restricted. For example, I produced a video about the investigation into Flight MH17 that was shot down over Ukraine. Or another video about the Bin Laden raid, following the operation that stormed his compound. The other reason why these videos couldn't work on YouTube is because they are made for the big screen. Videos that are not made for the YouTube algorithm, but unrushed storytelling. And since Nebula is a subscription service, I get to put higher budgets into the production of this series. Nebula is a creator-owned streaming service. And besides my videos, you can watch exclusive videos from lots of other independent creators. So go to nebula.tv/neo and make sure that you use that very link so that you get 40% off on an annual plan. All my exclusive videos are up there, so thanks for the support and thanks so much for watching this video.
No. Okay, I'm so hungry. A pilot hijacked a plane. What? Okay, that is wild. That type of videos. Searching for the 5. The 5 what? What? Okay, this is wild.
Mayday, mayday, mayday! Air Transat 236. The right engine has flamed out. We're down to just a few hundred kilograms of fuel left.
Flying halfway across the Atlantic Ocean, the captain of an Airbus A330 carrying 293 passengers and 13 crew members declared a mayday. Just minutes after his call, the situation worsened when the left engine also flamed out, leading to all lights shutting off and the deployment of oxygen masks due to the loss of cabin pressurization. In complete darkness, and with the aircraft's electrical systems switched to emergency configuration, the pilots struggled to control the aircraft, working hard to keep it flying. Meanwhile, the crew quickly prepared the passengers for a potential emergency water landing, aware that their chances of survival were slim. This is the story of Air Transat Flight 236.
What the freak? Okay, bro, this, I mean...
On August 24th, 2001, Air Transat Flight 236 was pushed back from the gate at Toronto Pearson Airport, Canada, with destination Lisbon Airport, Portugal. The route from Toronto to Lisbon crosses the Atlantic Ocean. Starting in Canada, it travels over the Western Atlantic, crossing towards the European mainland before reaching Lisbon. This flight typically takes about 7 hours. The aircraft designated for this flight was an Airbus A330, equipped with 362 passenger seats. Built in 1999, it had accumulated over 10,000 flying hours by the time of the incident. It was loaded with approximately 46.9 tons of fuel, 5.5 tons more than the minimum legal requirement. In the cockpit of the aircraft, there were 2 pilots. The captain was 48-year-old Robert Pichet, who had nearly 17,000 flying hours, with almost 800 of those on the Airbus A330. He was joined by the first officer, 28-year-old Dirk de Jager, who had accumulated 4,800 flying hours.
Não está mais, né?
Aqui tá igual novela mexicana.
Tá mesmo. Não, mas eu tô falando que ali foi livramento, mãe. Eu acho que foi.
Então, você para com esses amigos seus de ficar falando
Não,
bobagem.
parei. Mas agora eu estou consumindo muito conteúdo de avião pra eu já ficar preparado.
Ah, Lucas.
Uai, tem
bobagem.
Tem
bobagem.
Bobagem nada, filho.
Meu filho, você vai viajar normal.
Uai, bobagem nada.
Eu vou espremer. Foi livramento
não
mesmo,
vai.
porque eu vou...
Não.
Peraí, vira pra lá.
Sabia que o maior acidente de avião não foi por caída?
Não?
Não.
Foi por quê?
Porque 2 aviões
bateram. Esse acidente...
Eu não sei em qual aeroporto.
Eles
colidiram assim de frente.
Peraí.
Não?
Tá saindo já.
Fala pra você não tirar.
Não, ficar com a pele. Aqui, sabe a notícia boa? A mulher vai fazer pra você levar.
É verdade, eu acho que é por causa disso, mãe.
Você levar.
É. Ai!
Saiu, João,
Saiu.
Tá, saiu. Mas tem uns tanto de cravinho preto. Deixa eu marcar
no meu,
pra moça.
aqui ó, no meu nariz aqui tem...
Nossa, fica feio. Tem que limpar.
Sara em quantos dias?
Não, Sara rápido, porque
antes de eu ir, você marcar pra...
Ai. Porque não machuca, não.
Você marcar antes de eu ir. Amanhã. Não, você marcar amanhã.
Você vai hoje?
Hoje. Sara antes de eu ir?
Sara.
Então o quê? Então
pode ser. Essa pele.
Pode ser então.
Tá.
Pode ser.
Olha aqui, que tanto.
Pode ser.
Isso é bonito, olha aqui, um brocotoma.
Mas se doer muito assim,
não dói não, menina. Menino, olha aqui, um trem preto aqui. Meu Deus, não pode. É muito mais feio o cravo do que... Aqui, Lucas. Mas, ó, então...
Ai!
Olha, tirei. Semana que vem você vai. Então, você coloca na sua cabeça, tranquilo. Agora nós já sabemos como que é. Provavelmente você vai nesse voo que pega à noite aí, alguma empresa que pega à noite, vai fazer uma escala em algum lugar e vai chegar lá em Nova York, eles vão te buscar. Então vamos, meu filho, concentrar e saber que vai ser assim, que vai dar tudo certo, pensar positivo. Depois de lá você já vai pra casa que você vai morar.
Deve sair hoje ou amanhã essa casa?
Vamos comprar passagem tudo direitinho. Aí nessa semana nós vamos e mentaliza, você pede as coisas e não confia?
Confio.
Então, então vamos acreditar e aí vai tudo certo. Porque semana que vem, ou você vai semana que vem ou você não vai. Você vai estudar na escola servita aqui. Entendeu? Então, e sem bobajada de computador, hein? Eu não tô aqui fazendo papel de boba, não, pra depois você ficar aí com bobeira.
Bobeira não, mas é sério.
É sim.
Não é. Não vai mais não. Você
vou,
nem que eu tô virando a cara.
Não vou não. Então eu vou mandar mensagem pra Rose agora, tá? A mãe do menino.
Oi.
Mãe dele, que ela que é boa. Aí você pode até falar, ela é muito bacana. Você pode até falar com ela, porque eu tô preocupado de ficar marcado. Nossa, eu tô tirando com a unha quase. Tá doido?
Não, mãe!
Olha aqui.
Olha
aqui.
Falou que não ia, não. Deus, já. Nossa. Ai.
Aqui. Então tá bom.
Então tá
Foi
bom.
livramento, semana que... Então já livrou. né? Já deu o livramento, semana que vem, força na peruca.
Força.
Tá?
Já tá pronto.
Não, tem esperança, pai. Tá?
386 of which were on this specific aircraft. 4 days before Air
Caralho,
Transat
como
Flight
assim,
236
mano?
took off, it underwent routine maintenance. During this checkup, the maintenance
Ai, ai.
maintenance team discovered metal chips in the aircraft's oil filter, a sign of potential engine trouble. Unable to pinpoint the source of these chips, they decided to replace the engine. The engine being installed, loaned by Rolls-Royce, was in a pre-service bulletin configuration, while the replaced engine was in a post-service configuration. This difference caused an issue for the technician in charge. The rear hydraulic pump from the removed engine couldn't be fitted onto the replacement engine. The reason was a clash with the fuel pump inlet tube already installed on the loaned engine. Unable to access the service bulletins from the available computer terminals, the lead technician relied on advice from the maintenance engineering department. They recommended using only the rear fuel tube from the engine being replaced. By following this advice, the technicians were able to ensure there was enough space between the fuel tube and the nearby hydraulic tube. After installing the new engine, the technicians inspected the work and found no issues. The engine passed a ground run test, indicating it was functioning correctly, and the aircraft was approved for flight. Just before 1 in the morning, the Airbus took off. The pilots steered the aircraft eastward, ascending to a cruising altitude of 39,000 feet. The first hours of the flight went smoothly, with no issues on board. It was a calm and routine journey as the plane continued steadily toward its destination. But several hours into their journey, while halfway across the ocean, the pilots encountered something unusual. Upon checking the secondary display for engine readings, they spotted abnormalities in the right-hand engine's data. The oil pressure was unusually high, paired with a lower oil temperature and a decrease in oil quantity. These warnings presented a scenario that the pilots couldn't immediately understand. Normally, engine oil temperatures increase during a flight. So, when the pilots saw the oil temperature going down, they were confused. They looked through the manual to find an explanation, but they couldn't find anything that explained the strange readings they were seeing. The pilots reported the issue to their maintenance control center, asking for further investigation. However, the center also couldn't determine the cause of the problem. What the pilots didn't know was that the issues with the engine oil indications were caused by a massive fuel leak deep inside the right-hand engine. A serious mistake was made while replacing the engine. The hydraulic and fuel lines were placed too close to each other. Even though they believed there was sufficient space between them, they didn't consider how the pressure from the hydraulic system could affect them. During the flight, the hydraulic and fuel lines of the right engine were in continuous contact, slowly wearing down against each other. Eventually, this friction caused the fuel line to rupture, resulting in a significant hole. According to the final report, the aircraft was losing an estimated 12 to 15 tons of fuel per hour through this rupture, an immense contrast to the typical fuel consumption of about 2.6 tons per hour for an Airbus engine. But even with the significant fuel leak, the engine kept running as usual. The fuel system design of the aircraft plays a significant role in this. The fuel system of this Airbus is designed with multiple fuel tanks. Each wing contains 2 tanks, along with a center tank and a trim tank located in the tail's horizontal stabilizer. The trim tank serves the purpose of redistributing fuel from the back to the front of the aircraft to maintain its central gravity limits. As fuel levels decrease in the wing tanks, the trim tank automatically transfers fuel forward to the depleted wing tanks. This transfer is normally not scheduled to take place until 35 minutes from the destination airport, when the wing tanks are below 4 tons or when the aircraft descends below flight level 245. This process ensures a balanced fuel distribution for landing. However, in this instance, the trim tank initiated its final fuel transfer prematurely, directing all its remaining fuel forward into the wing tanks much earlier.
Ai, ai, ai. Bagulho doido, fi. Caralho, mano, 28 views, que isso, mano? É coisa, hein? Numa livezinha? À toa? Sem fazer nada?